Patrick, you wrote a great article that I just read a couple of days ago about Michael and your experiences with him. Wow, amazing article. It gave me chills, and I can't believe you're on the phone, so it's nice to talk to you.
I suppose Deborah has the credit for that. Yes, certainly, Deborah, and thanks very much for the article. It certainly was a pleasure knowing Michael as a person over, sort of all that period, because Michael, as you said earlier, was very spiritual. He was also very gentle, and I suppose during the time we probably didn't appreciate that he didn't have much longer on the planet with us, and certainly if I'd have known that, my experience with him probably would have been even a deeper one, because Michael used to phone me a lot and ask my advice on different things, and there'd be little silly things like I was in Abu Dhabi, and he would, you have to go into, sort of such and such a restaurant, I need the menu out of there or something. It'd be all, sort of little things like that, or, if he was having some difficulties regarding certain things, he'd phone. He said, Treacy, I want your opinion on this. It wouldn't even be Patrick, and he says, Treacy, I really value your opinion on this. And then, another day he'd sort of say, Patrick, look, sort of chat over different things, but yes, there were certain things in life that troubled him that he wanted to get off his mind, and certainly people in life that bothered him. And in that period, I suppose, post-Santa Maria, he felt that in many ways that America had let him down, honestly. And he felt also, sort of that probably he was not going to go back to Neverlands. And it's interesting, initially, when they were considering burying him in Neverlands, I would have thought myself, this is something that Michael wouldn't have wanted. It's almost like his whole sanctuary there, you turned inside out, it was violated by, sort of LAPD. He was as well, and his mentality, sort of, he took an awful battering mentally over the whole thing. I think in many ways he was, afraid of and paranoid of everybody around him. I don't mean fans. He loved the fans always, media particularly, and in many ways he felt, sort of very betrayed, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I could imagine, because the depths that they went to in regards to him, and to try to make him look like someone he wasn't. And I would imagine that would cause a lot of paranoia about, having to watch everything you say or do, and I can also see how he would feel that America let him down, because we did.
and the sad fact is this, that he was such a good and gentle person, and because he did it in a total Christian way, he never really got the credit for it that other people, recently a lot of film stars and musicians have went down to Haiti, for instance, and got associated with it, and it's often, sort of a self-promotion thing, and Michael was never like that. Michael always, would certainly, sort of do all his charitable works and humanitarian works behind the scenes, which, sort of was one of the reasons in many ways that people were even, sort of unaware of his humanitarian work or the depth of it, but I mean, at times Michael lived penniless, and I know this, and he still would be giving away, and had given away, many, many millions to people that he would see as less fortunate. And certainly, his image, because of that, will go on for years to come. As people, find out about Michael, find the truth about him, and realize that so much injustice was done to him. It was almost like, analogous to, sort of some other people we sort of mentioned that during their period on Earth, sort of weren't appreciated, and then sort of in later sort of times, people realized what a real treasure they had,
Right, yeah, and it's a shame that it wasn't realized as much while he was alive. You just always hope that he had some sense of how much people valued him, but I'm sometimes unsure, about that because of all he went through.
My great concern now is the trial that's coming up, because I get a feeling that we will be all sort of subjected to a media barrage of corporate America trying to further sort of destroy his name. And in some ways, he'll be made out to be some sort of drug freak that sort of self-injected himself, was responsible or culpably in some way involved with his own death. And, I really believe that this will be put across probably on the basis of an insurance payout, And I mean, I know a lot of people are saying that in the background, but I think, there is a time and a place, and that we will have to, and I probably will step forward as well, to defend his name, because, it was bad enough, the case being brought against him in Santa, sort of Monica, and on 14 charges, every one thrown out, and there wasn't even a word almost about it in the media the next day, because they just wanted to hand poor Michael to death. And I think this time round, you're going to see something similar happening, the period after Christmas, And certainly when the trial starts, it's good.
I agree, though, that I worry about this trial, because I think that, I agree with you, I think that it's going to dredge up, an attempt to dredge up all this negative about him again, which never was true the first time,
Yes, and the thing is, because there is a sort of public out there that has been, to an extent, conditioned to some level of brainwashing, they'll have an appetite for listening to falseness also. I mean, I've already been offered, sort of close to 5 to 6 figure numbers, sort of to try and sort of, say bad things about him. Number one, they don't exist, but that's fair enough. But to think that anybody could in some way, want to print or make up something just for the sake of selling a paper on the basis of somebody else's name or his dignity or his respect, particularly somebody who was so good to other people, it really astounds me, in many ways horrifies me. And that wasn't even from your side of the Atlantic, that was on ours,
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, and that's a perfect example of how the media works for people who aren't as aware that, they'll go out and try to pay, offer, big money to try to get dirt on somebody. And it's sad to see that, especially for him. As you said, he was such a kind-hearted person and always giving, and it's a shame people couldn't see that side of him more and appreciate it, because there was so much false information that was out there.
I agree, and the sad fact is, sort of, you only had to be in his company 5 minutes, and he admitted this total radiance of goodness. I mean, and you never really heard him give out about anybody else. And even though, sort of, he was bothered by a lot of people that were probably even, I would say, stealing from him, money-wise, he never really castigated them. He would always, to an extent, reach the point without, sort of naming names or anything, but he'd be making more aware just of what was bothering him that way, But there's no doubt about it, he often spoke in generalities in a way that, there was just no badness in him,
Right.
And, and continually all the time, sort of he seemed to, to think about other people. That thing we mentioned about the kids in the hospital that were burnt, and certainly I think there's a book coming out on them very soon as well. He, from time to time, you'd be chatting about something else, and he just, sort of a few days later would turn around and say something like, Patrick, tell me, are those children in pain now, Will they be getting morphine for their pain? And I would say, yeah, well, the hospital wouldn't allow them to be in pain, but, 3 or 4 days later, it'll be back to the same thing, I mean, those particular children, and you could see that, things like that bothered him continually, and it was just genuine affection, sort of for other people, and particularly children,
Right, and it seems like so many people can't seem to understand that. I think because it was turned into something evil, and it wasn't. It was, but it was twisted into looking like it was something evil, and people can't seem to understand like inherent goodness in people. And I think, I've heard other people describe people who had met Michael. They described the same thing, where there was like just this love just pouring out of him, and some people described it as almost like they could feel like God's love in his heart just, emanating from him.
I think that's a very, very fair comment, and I certainly experienced that on almost every occasion I met him.
Okay.
Because he almost worked on 2 different levels. There was the interaction of what you're doing with him, but there was a continual thought process of, sort of wanting to sort of help other people as well. It's almost like that sort of state that I had mentioned in Buddhism, that just people who reach that level of, spiritual sort of enlightenment, almost within themselves have this continual, wanting to sort of, help other people. And it was fascinating, to see that in Michael. And I was so humbled to, have shared many experiences like that with him, because when you're in the presence of somebody, sort of good. I've met many celebrities in my time, and even, sort of this week alone I did, but there was none like Michael, really, It's almost they all had an angle, but he didn't, and it's almost like a lot of them got involved in certain charities or functions almost to promote their own name and things like that, but everything he did was, sort of behind the scenes.
Right. I agree in that, and that made him so special, but people didn't realize, I think.
Absolutely.
And also, I wanted to piggyback on something you said earlier. You mentioned how you were offered money to lie. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but in 1993, after the allegations broke, there was a family, they stayed with Michael at Havenhurst in the 80s. And the National Enquirer offered the father $200,000 to lie and say Michael molested his kids while they were at Havenhurst, and he turned it down completely.
Wow.
That article is available on Fox News on Roger Friedman's column from 2005. But when I read that, it just blew me away that the tabloids would stoop that low to offer $200,000 to make up a lie about something so serious.
Oh, it's incredible the sort of depths that they will go to. It's just to sell papers. And the sad fact is they also have absolutely no sort of feeling of any sort of wrong in this, because I know, because I've been sort of in some of these people's presence, that they just see it as another business deal. There's no right, wrong, anything like that there.
Right.
So it astounds me at times, and certainly it's going to be certainly an interesting January.
So Michael really was crucified.
Oh, of course he was. And there's no doubt about it. I would think, if there was the tabloid media present on Earth during the period that sort of Jesus Christ was here 2,000 years ago, they'd probably be branding him as a paedophile as well. From the point of view that Jesus loved children, Jesus did everything and explained his parables through children, and Michael was very much almost the same way. Not to bring too close of an analogy, but it's almost like that whole love that sort of, because we're all now in Western society almost afraid to look or smile at children in case people would, sort of get the wrong impression. And it's amazing. I mean, I was at a football match recently, and, some of my friends that I grew up at school with, the kids were playing by a puddle, and I had a camera with me, and I just went over because I didn't really know the kids, but I knew him well, and I knew they were his kids, and I was at the football match with him, and I just took a photograph of the kids, and these one person came up and says, "Do you have permission to take a photograph of these children?" And like the father came over and put his arm around me and says, but he said, Patrick, that's the way people are now, And it's just incredible how, almost in one generation, the whole, I suppose, relationship between children and adults has changed as well, because kids don't walk to school anymore, even in Ireland, and that sort of normal, I suppose, bonding relationship they got from strangers is almost gone now. It's it does concern me, because even I see in my brother's children, they really pampered them, and they're brought to school everywhere in SUVs. And, they're never allowed to walk after dark or out on the road. And when we were kids growing up, we walked 2 or 3 miles to school, and we came home together, and there wasn't, no fear. It's just a different world,
Yeah, I agree. And I don't mean to cut into this, but I'm getting messages saying that Patrick was saying some really important things. So.
Yeah, we're going to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate that whole, period, and particularly in a country like Ireland, where, paedophilia got associated with clerical abuse, and there was almost like a wall went up that it brought down governments, it brought down institutions, it brought down, people of respect. And that was the period also, the Catholic priests in the United States, Michael got caught up in all that as well. So it's very easy to turn the minds of a hostile nation because they're being primed with other problems,